Hi, this is Gabe Fernandez with Control Alt Life. This is a podcast where we talk about real life, business, relationships, struggles, success, failure, and everything in between. No politics. Today's topic is something that affects people from every income, every age group, every stage of life. What is that? Living beyond your means. Now, before we begin, I want to make something very clear. I'm not standing here pretending to be perfect and have all the answers. I'm not pretending that I've always made good financial decisions. I've made mistakes, okay? And I've bought things I probably shouldn't have bought. I've worried about appearances when I should have worried more about stability. I've chased opportunities and they didn't work out. Um, I've made purchases based on emotions instead of logic. And if we're being honest, most of us have, right? So this episode is not about judging people. It's not about telling people that they should have bought this or they shouldn't have bought that. It's about sharing lessons I wish somebody would have taught me when I was younger. Because honestly, if somebody would have sat me down like I do with my kids and explained to me what real wealth actually looks like, I probably would have made some very different decisions. One of the biggest lies our society tells us is that success has a certain look. Success has a certain vehicle. Success has a certain watch. Success has a certain brand. Success has certain purses, wallets, belts. Success lives in certain neighborhoods, has a certain house with a certain amount of square footage. Success posts certain pictures on social media. But the older I get, the more I realize that most of that is complete garbage. Okay. Because some of the wealthiest people I've ever met look completely ordinary. And some of the people who look the wealthiest were hanging out by a thread financially. Now, today I want to talk about that difference. The difference between looking successful and actually being successful, because they are not the same thing. They're not even close. Okay. Now, there's a phrase that has been around for generations. What is that phrase? Keeping up with the Joneses. The funny thing is that most people don't even know who the Joneses are, but they're spending their entire lives trying to keep up with them. Now, think about that. People buy things they don't need with money that they don't even have to impress people that they don't even like. And somehow we've convinced ourselves that this is normal. Social media has made the problem 10 or maybe 100 times worse. Every time you open the phone, somebody is showing off that new vehicle, that new house, a vacation, a luxury handbag, a watch, a new boat, a new side by side, a new business venture. And after enough exposure to that, people start feeling like they're falling behind. The problem is that you're comparing your reality to someone else's highlight reel. You don't know if that truck is $2,500 a month. You don't know if that vacation was paid for with a credit card. You don't know if the designer purse was purchased with borrowed money. You don't know if the person is stressing every single night on how they're going to make the next payment. The only thing that you see is the picture. You don't see the reality. Now, one thing that I've noticed throughout life is that people often confuse luxury with wealth. Those are not the same thing. Luxury is what people see. Wealth is what people don't see. Okay. Let's make that clear. A luxury vehicle is visible. Money in the bank isn't. Designer clothes are visible. Financial security isn't. Being debt free isn't. That's why so many people spend money on things that create an appearance of wealth while completely neglecting the things that actually create wealth. They finance a lifestyle instead of building a future. And eventually that catches up to them. Trust me, I know. Because appearances require constant maintenance. Real wealth creates freedom. Yeah, freedom. Now, I grew up in pawn shops. My dad and my uncles, they started Easy Pawn in the 80s. I remember it was a convenience store on South First. Uh, South First is Julio Cesar Chavez in Austin, Texas. It was a gas station. So I grew up in pawn shops. I saw everything coming in. I remember my dad, he started what was called a 24-hour pawn shop service. It didn't matter what time you came, as long as it fit in that box and you were able to pass it through that secured window, you were able to pawn it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I go into these pawn shops all the time. It doesn't matter where I'm at. Me and my wife, we love these pawn shops. Okay. And I walk into these pawn shops and I look around. Seriously, I take my time. Okay. And I want you to do this too. If you ever have a time to walk into a pawn shop, I want you to just stop, look around, and take your time. And I want you to look into those glass cases. I want you to look at the watches. I want you to look at the sunglasses. I want you to look at the electronics. I want you to look at the jewelry. And at one point, every single item in that building represented excitement. Someone wanted it. Someone convinced themselves that it would make them happy. And eventually, many of those same people needed money more than they needed the item. It happens all the time. I've seen it all the time. That should tell us something, that most of the things people chase lose value. Most of the things people use to impress others become nearly worthless over time. But peace never loses value. Financial stability never loses value. Security never loses value. Those things become more valuable the older you get. Okay? Now, this is something that surprises people all the time. Some of the richest people I've met wear simple clothes. They drive older vehicles. They live below their means. And you would never know how much money they have. Why? Because they don't need validation. They don't need strangers to think that they're successful. Their confidence doesn't come from possessions. It comes from security. And that's a lesson more people need to hear. Because if you need everyone around you to know that you're successful, you're probably focusing on the wrong things. Real confidence doesn't need advertising. I want to say that again. Real confidence doesn't need advertising. Now, buying quality versus buying status. Let's be fair here. There's a huge difference between buying quality and buying status. Those are not the same thing, okay? A good pair of boots. You buy yourself a custom-made pair of boots or some Lucchese's, they're going to last you forever, okay? You buy yourself a good pair of Levi's, they're going to last you forever. Now, a good set of tools might cost you a little bit more, but they're going to last you forever. A quality appliance might cost you a little bit more, but that's different. You're paying for durability. You're paying for longevity. You're paying for value. That's smart. What I'm talking about is spending extra money solely on a freaking logo, man. Spending extra money solely because you want somebody else to see it. Have you seen those shoes that people wear? What are they? Golden Goose? Now, I did some research on Golden Goose. It takes $50 to $75 to make a pair of Golden Goose shoes. It takes $150 to $200 to make a Louis Vuitton purse. And that's where people get in trouble. because status is expensive and it never lasts. There will always be a newer version. There will always be a bigger version, a better version, a more expensive version. You can spend your entire life chasing status, but guess what? You're never going to catch up. Okay? Now, do you need that Escalade? Do you need that F-350 diesel? Now, some people do. Some people need a tow. Some people need that truck. And you know what? If you need it, get it. But if you don't need it and you're just using it as a status, you've already lost. So let's talk a little bit about vehicles. Because this is where many people get themselves in financial trouble, okay? Now, people focus on what? As soon as they go buy a vehicle, what do they focus on? A monthly payment. That's a mistake. Now, I've taught my kids over and over and over again that the payment is only part of the equation. If a salesman comes up to you and he says, "What are you looking for in a payment?" You walk off. That is a red flag. You find out how much is that vehicle out the door. That's only part of it. After you do that, you find out how much is it going to be to insure. Now, if you're financing a vehicle, full coverage. I don't know how many people I see. They'll go buy a vehicle that they can't afford, and then they'll go put liability insurance on it. And next thing you know, something happens and they can't even afford to fix it. It's so frustrating. Now, you also have maintenance, you have repairs, you have fuel, you have registration, you have tires, unexpected breakdowns, depreciation. And if it's a luxury vehicle, all of those costs go up, sometimes dramatically. Now, the question isn't, can I make the payment? The real question is, can I afford the ownership? I don't care if it's a car. I don't care if it's a piece of property. I don't care what it is. Can I afford the ownership? Those are two very different questions. Now, my daughter came to me the other day and she showed me a picture of a Jaguar sports car. Right now, my daughter, look, thank God, my kids are very, very financially responsible. And if they're not, I'll get them. But recently, my daughter showed me a Jaguar sports car that she wanted to buy that her brother showed her. And immediately I started asking her questions, not because I don't want her to enjoy her life, not because I don't want her to have nice things, but because I wanted her to think long term. And I always share this with y'all on all my podcasts. Think long term, right? I asked her, I said, how much is your insurance going to go up? How much are the repairs? Where is the nearest dealership for this Jaguar? What happens when something breaks? How much are brakes? How much is the routine maintenance? Can you comfortably afford all of that? Now, not barely afford it. I'm talking about comfortably. Because buying a vehicle is easy. They're giving out financing like crazy. They're pretty much approving anybody. Okay. Maintaining the vehicle is where reality begins. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't think about ownership until after they've signed the paperwork. Now, I'm going to give you a little example here. I remember in 2018, me and my wife, we bought a Mercedes Benz E350. Beautiful car, comfortable, fun to drive, no regrets. But it taught me something. Luxury ownership is expensive. Service was expensive, repairs were expensive, and every time something needed attention, we had to travel to San Antonio or Midland. Now, these aren't complaints, they're just realities that you have to take into consideration. And I understand there's a lot of buy here, pay here dealerships where they focus on getting you approved rather than educating you and saying, why is your credit so bad that you can't go to Mitchell GMC? They're not there to educate you. They're there to sell you a car. And then when you go onto Facebook, you see an Escalade, and then you're like, oh my gosh, there's an Escalade at buy here, pay here, Joe Blow's car lot. But what you don't understand is that you're going to have to replace that battery and it's $400. That Cadillac is not going to run the way it should unless you have the factory tires, which are Bridgestones, and they're very expensive. I know, we've had one. Now, all of that stuff you have to do research on. Okay? And what people need to understand is that when you're shopping, you're usually focused on excitement, not the responsibility. The responsibility comes later, and the responsibility always sends a bill. I used to think that success looked a certain way. Now I think success feels a certain way. Success feels like sleeping at night. Success feels like not stressing over bills. Success feels like having money set aside for emergencies. Success feels like being able to help your family. Success feels like freedom. The older I get, the less interested I am in appearances. And the more interested I am in peace. Because peace is something money cannot buy. And if you spent all your money trying to impress people, trust me, you're going to go broke if you're not already. Now, business owners and appearances. This lesson applies to business owners too, including myself. I see business owners trying to look successful before they even become successful. Huge offices, expensive furniture, luxury vehicles, fancy branding, and meanwhile, they can't even make payroll. Okay? It's backwards. Build the foundation first. Build the system. Build the cash flow. Build the stability. Then enjoy the rewards. Too many businesses go broke trying to look successful. Now, real success might not be exciting. Real success might look boring. A paid off vehicle, money and savings, no credit card debt, a dependable home, an emergency fund. Those things don't get a lot of attention online. And I'm going to say this a lot in this podcast. They create freedom. And freedom is worth more than attention. Now, one thing I hope my children and grandchildren learn is patience. Not everything has to happen today. Not every desire requires immediate action. Sometimes waiting is wisdom. Sometimes saving is wisdom. Sometimes saying no is wisdom. The ability to delay gratification is one of the most powerful financial skills a person can develop. Because every time you say no to something unnecessary, you're saying yes to something more important later. Now, I had this all scripted out, but I want to really, really grind into this as much as I can. Because I'm guilty of this, guys. Again, I haven't said this enough, is I wanted everyone in town to know who I was. I wanted to walk into a room and they automatically know that I'm not going to be the cheapest, I'm going to be the best. And I tried to do that with a Rolex. I've tried to do that with a big truck. I've tried to do that with expensive cologne, gold. And sometimes it works. But the burden that it causes, it doesn't add up. It really doesn't. Now, sometimes we get to the point where we want to live the life that we know we deserve. And that's human nature. But if you understand something right now, you'll be better off. Anything that comes out of your pocket, money wise, anything that comes out of your pocket, make sure that you can afford it. Because if you can't, it's not just what you're spending. The after effects are a lot more expensive. I've been blessed, thank God, to have a team that I have. And they help me every single day get through the poor decisions that I've made as a business owner because and there's no excuse, but I didn't have the education that owning a business requires. I had to learn along the way. The whole reason for this podcast is I want to give knowledge to people. I want them to know how hot the fire is without them having to touch it. Now, again, I don't think that I'm better than anyone, nor do I think that I'm perfect. I still make a lot of mistakes every single day. But if I can do something to prevent someone from going through what me and my family and my team have gone through, I'm going to do it. I've just always been that way. Do you know why they have Affirm and buy now, pay later and all of that? It's a big cloud of crap. This system that we live in wants to consume us. It wants to consume our time. It wants to consume our love. It wants to consume our energy to trying to keep our head above water. And it's all because people are uneducated. How many people are you going to see that are living a lifestyle that they really can't afford? Remember, simple is success, not the other way around. And at the end of the day, sometimes that simple vacation is more entertaining than that trip to Cabo or New York or wherever. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge. I like doing these challenges. Ask yourself these questions. What am I doing or buying to impress people? What debt is stealing my peace? Am I building wealth or am I building an image? If I lost my income tomorrow, would my lifestyle survive? And perhaps the most important question: am I chasing freedom or am I chasing approval? Because those two roads lead to very different destinations. Now, in closing, the richest people I know are not necessarily the people driving the newest vehicles. They're not necessarily wearing the designer clothes. They're not necessarily posting luxury vacations online. The richest people I know have peace and they have security. They have options. They have freedom. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for me. Not the appearance of success. I'm talking about real success, the kind that allows you to sleep at night, the kind that allows you to enjoy your family, the kind that allows you to live without constant financial stress. Remember, success isn't about looking rich, success is about living free. I want to thank you for listening. My name is Gabe Fernandez. This is Control Alt Life podcast. Take care of yourself, take care of your families. And remember, life is hard enough. Let's not add to the headaches. If we do better, things will get better. And I'll see you on the next episode.